Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Alright, before we get started, let me say that I'm as happy as you are to be resuming these regular morning briefings. I should say, though, that it's a bit incorrect to use the term rested to describe what I've been doing. When you do what it is that we in the black media do, we don't really rest because we're continually engaged, continually monitoring, even when we're taking time off, quote-unquote, from our regular posting schedules. I hope that while I was curtailing my schedule for a bit, that you took the opportunity to visit the other channels that I had told you about, like Tarian Rain, Your World, Lisa Cabrera, and others. The new voices of black media are not monolithic. There's plenty of people who you may not listen to regularly that you should. The more of us who lend our voices to this mission, the stronger we become, though I nonetheless am grateful and humbled that after over 15 years, you've chosen to still keep listening to me. I call myself the Professor, but make no mistake, I have never and will never consider any of you to be my students, quote-unquote. When I talk about you, I never call you students. I call you what you are, family and fellow soldiers. And that's for a reason. No matter how smart an individual may be, even if you are the quote-unquote proverbial smartest person in the room, no one man is smarter than the room itself. I'm not some wise sage handing down wisdom from on high. I am one of you. I'm working every day to form my thoughts and to say what it is I know you're thinking, hopefully to do it as sharply and insightfully as you're thinking it. That's what I do. When you post messages saying, man, what you said, I was thinking the same thing, I just didn't know how to say it. That is what I see my role as. It's what I work at every day that I do this, and I'm encouraged beyond words that so many of you have been here with me for so long to help me do it. Black empowerment is not monolithic, and none of its spokesmen and spokeswomen operate in a vacuum. That you're here listening, that you are actively involved in this, also helps to shape and promote the message that I and others express. This is a collaborative process, and we're all part of it. I get as much from you being here, and I hope you get something from me being here too. And for that, I am grateful for the presence of each and every one of you. And now, your B1 morning briefing. Don't look now, but Joe Biden's black support is continuing to fall. No wonder the orange man's neck and neck with him in the polls. See, Republicans don't need black voters in order to win elections, but they are desperate to make sure black people stay at home or are otherwise hindered from voting. Well, they didn't need to waste time with laws meant to restrict voting or election police or any of their other pointless stunts. The best tool the GOP has to suppress the black vote has been Joe Biden and the Democrats. After Biden won the presidency, he said that he had black voters' backs. But he hasn't done a thing for us since taking office. But then again, the bastard hasn't done a thing for us since he got into politics over a half-century ago. Well, if nothing else, he's consistent. But of course the white media is doing everything they can to tiptoe around what the reason is for his eroding black support. But they know what it is. The New York Times themselves admitted they know the problem. They started off by admitting that Biden's loss of black voter support is actually part of a trend among black voters, and this trend has been going on for 10 years now. Now that date, 10 years ago, is very important. What year was it 10 years ago? 2013. And why is that significant? Who was president in 2013? Barack Obama. In fact, he had just gotten reelected the year before in 2012, so 2013 was the first year of his second term. People made excuses for Obama when he was campaigning for president in 2008. They told black people not to make any demands of him because that would cost him white voters. That sound familiar? We just had to be quiet and hope that he would do something for us. They also told us in 2008 to ignore all of the insults that he made to the black community, how he would condescend to us and lecture us and stereotype black men, his attacking black religious leaders like Reverend Wright. We were told not to oppose Obama's blatant disrespect because he was only doing that so that white voters would think that he was okay. He was just playing the game. He was just doing a chess move. But after he got elected, his verbal abuse continued. And he never started doing anything for us either. In 2008, when Obama was elected, Democrats enjoyed unprecedented support from black voters, and as a result, when Obama took office, black voters handed Democrats control of the House and a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Democrats had 60 seats back in 2008. By the way, does that sound familiar yet? Black voters also gave Biden control of the House and the Senate too, his first 2 years in office. And what did Biden do for us? About the same thing Obama did when we gave him control of Congress for the first 2 years of his administration. So this benign neglect of the black community is not some coincidence. It's not some unfortunate happenstance that consistently happens to us. And the white media had their bootlicks telling us that Obama can't do anything for black people because he has to get reelected. Wait till he gets reelected. Then he'll start doing things. So just like that, we went from wait till he gets elected to, well, you got to wait 4 more years till he gets re-elected. And of course, when he got re-elected, we were told, well, we got to make sure the Democrats hold on to the White House, so you can't ask anything until after Hillary runs. See how that treadmill works? Now, that's not what Obama told the feminists, though, and it's not what Biden told the LGBT community or Asians or anyone else. With everybody else, they do things for them in the first term, right away. No excuses. And it's not because Asians represent some huge voter constituency. They don't. Even the New York Times said Asians are too small a constituency to make a difference. And it's not because Asians are the lion's share of political donors either. It's because the Democrats have an open, blatant program of elevating everyone else over black people, a hyper-aggressive agenda of making sure we get ignored and everybody else is given the resources that they want, and everybody gets to leapfrog us. This is a program at work here. So after 4 years of watching Obama have beer summits with racist cops and doing nothing but lecturing black voters, we got fed up with him after his first term. Go back and listen to the videos and the broadcasts that those of us in the new black media were doing back then. You'll notice that our tone regarding Obama was decidedly more hostile in 2012 than it had been in 2008. In 2008, we began banging the drum saying that if Obama doesn't produce for us in his first term, then he shouldn't have a second term. And we weren't alone. While it's true that Obama did get reelected in 2012, it wasn't by the same margin as he had in 2008. And that was the beginning of a trend that has continued all the way to the present. And now the white media has finally been forced to admit what we've been saying all along. No matter how they try to put a happy face on things, they know more and more black people are wising up to the scam because of the work that we've been doing. All the times that they had some black bootlick on TV or in print cheerleading for the Democrats, that was all spin. They have empty suits, sellouts with no influence and no credibility who try to dictate our opinions to us. But it doesn't work, and even the enemy knows that. Yes, it's taken a decade for the trend to be undeniable even to our worst enemies, but as our Grand Master teacher Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, revolts and revolutions take on average between 10 and 20 years to gain steam. And he was absolutely right. Group dynamics don't change overnight. It takes time, and the larger the group, the more time it takes, especially when you're an oppressed minority with no resources. But who is to blame for Biden's shrinking black support? The white media also knows the answer to that too. They admit that it's a generational divide, that this happens to be a difference between the younger black generation and the older black one. Voters under 45, that's basically millennials, Gen Z, and the tail end of Generation X, are the ones who are breaking away, and it's mostly black baby boomers who are still committed to the party. So they're admitting that young black voters are the ones driving this trend, and that matters because the older voters eventually die off sooner. And if the young voters are walking away, that means your future constituents won't be there. This is the political future the Democrats are facing, and that's why they've been going overboard trying to appeal to everybody else in the hopes of replacing all those deserting black voters with white females, LGBT voters, immigrants, disaffected right-of-center voters, whomever. And as I've been telling you for the last few years, the New York Times finally is admitting Democrats have tried to use issues like abortion and so-called threats to democracy just as nothing more than a way to gin up support from non-black constituencies. That's who their real audience is for this. But it hasn't worked. Abortion is meant to appeal to white suburban women, especially young white women, since they're the ones mostly of childbearing age. But all that's done is to turn out support that they already had. Democrats talk about the Republicans being fascists, And while that is true, that hasn't brought people back to the Democrats, because while the white media tries to talk as if the Republicans' pivot to fascism is brand new, we, the black voters, have been seeing this going on for at least 60 years. And people like Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama were helping the Republicans to do it. Undercutting the unions, refusing to fight racist GOP laws, and in the case of Biden, voting for and even writing laws meant to attack black people like the '94 crime bill, or Biden's law as he used to call it before it became a political liability. This is what the Democrats were doing to help push the Republicans' fascism. You see, as black people, we don't fear America losing democracy because as black people in this country, we have never had democracy for a single second. We can't lose what we never had. And if Democrats truly were so terrified that the country was about to tip into totalitarianism, then it should be a pig simple, easy decision to make to finally pay black people the debt that we're owed and to institute the policies that we've demanded that should have been passed 150 years ago. And yet, even now, Democrats are still refusing. They won't even discuss the matter. So that tells me the Democrats can't be too worried about authoritarianism from the Republicans, otherwise they would be tripping over their shoelaces to do what the black vote says. After all, democracy hangs in the balance, right? Only that's not what this is really about. This is just sloganizing from the white left, the latest attempt to come up with some talking point that's meant to get people to go to the polls one more time. Yeah, the Republicans are going hard with the fascism shtick, but Democrats aren't doing anything to fight them. Even when they have the power to, they don't. They see that people are angry that the Democrats refuse to do anything for us, and now they want something to scare us, like they did 3 years ago, talking about how Trump is too dangerous to be left in the White House. How many of you Negroes fell for that one? The Times also admits that among non-white, that means black voters, Biden's support is mostly slipping among those making less than $100,000 a year. So that means unless you're six figures, you're falling behind economically and the cost of living is crushing you. And what's Biden's response to this been? Nothing. So unless you're someone comfortable enough to be making at least six figures, which means you have a house and can stay on top of your bills comfortably, if you're not among the top 10% of earners, then you don't have the luxury of pretending that Biden's benign neglect isn't a problem. And even among the six-figure crowd, he's becoming an issue. So you got one of the white media's premier propaganda outlets admitting what we've been saying all along. All these years of them denying it and whitewashing it and trying to claim that what we've said doesn't reflect the black consensus. Now we've gotten closer to that tipping point, and they have to at least admit some of it. Seems everything wasn't fine after all. And this isn't some brief short-term thing going on. This has been building for over a decade. And all of their bootlicks and all of their Negro whispers haven't been able to stop it or even slow it down. But the white media wasn't saying that. Until now, when circumstances forced them to. Remember when Michael Bloomberg made his damn-to-fail presidential run back in 2020? The white media was saying that his stop-and-frisk policies when he was mayor of New York clearly wasn't hurting his support among black voters. Remember that? And what was the white media's basis for telling that lie? That Bloomberg did some PR public stunt where he had some bootlick black mayors to quote-unquote endorse him, like Mayor Sylvester of Houston. That was their evidence. And those bootlicks proved to everybody that they were completely out of step with the black community. Because when Bloomberg went to Brown Chapel AME Church in Alabama, those black parishioners confronted him publicly. Bloomberg dropped out of the race right after that, and almost immediately the white media had to change their tune and admit that stop and frisk hurt him after all. See, the white media's lying, and they know they're lying. But what they don't know is whether enough of us will push back against the lies. See, it didn't take millions of black people, or even thousands of black people, or even 100 black people to run Bloomberg out of the race. It only took about a dozen of us to do it. What you're seeing now is them trying to cover their behinds when they realize that their con game with the black voter base didn't work either. The white media told us that black people loved Obama's stinking drawers and that there was no problem at all for him, and nobody cared what black troublemakers on the internet were saying. They had bootlicks on all the shows cheerleading for him, like Roly-Poly Martin and others. But here's the proof that we, the black media, reflect the true sentiment of the black street, and that the white media has known this all along. That's why they don't have Obama running around endorsing people. They don't tout him so much, do they? They know that his name is a dirty word, especially among young black folks. anyone who's not a senior citizen, and truth be told, there's more than a few black senior citizens in our community who can't stand him either. Obama is a sellout. He did white power's bidding, and now he and his wife are getting their payoff from the very white corporate interests who they served for 8 years. See, being a bootlick for these sellouts is not a victimless crime. Oh, and on a side note, who was Obama's vice president? That's right, Joe Biden. See, this younger black generation showing that we have very long memories. We remember when Biden was vice president. We remember when he was in the Senate. He didn't do anything for us, though he did do a lot of things against us. His track record of failing to produce for us and even fighting against our interests didn't just begin in 2020. So, why is Biden's black voter support crumbling? For the same reason the Democrats' black voter support has been crumbling. Because black people are finally becoming transactional voters. Tit for tat. Quid pro quo. You want this vote? You gotta put something tangible in our hands. Biden's problem is the same as Obama's. He has made himself politically irrelevant to black voters. Sure, there will always be some Negroes, mostly these old fossils, these civil rights retreads, who are going to vote no matter what, mostly out of habit. But for everyone else below the age of retirement, you have to actually put something on the table to get our vote. And Biden has spent the last 50 years showing up empty-handed. And now there's been a critical mass of black voices out here telling our people that is not okay. And you have a lot of these bootlicks who previously were selling the soap shamelessly for the Democrats, like, say, the breakfast schlubs, who are now saying exactly what we've been saying. Oh, yeah, all of those folks like Roly-Poly Martin, y'all young black folks, don't need to be catering them. They ain't going to do a damn thing at the polls. Now these idiots, since they see that their deflections and distractions have failed, they're talking like us. Yeah, why are black voters not going for Biden? Because of reparations. Gee. The black media has only been saying that for the better part of 15 years. So that's what's been happening with your so-called black mouthpieces. Here they are running away from their previous cheerleading for the Democrats, all that shucking and jiving and bringing Hillary Clinton by the studio so the breakfast schlubs can shuck and jive and joke about whether or not she likes hot sauce or chicken or whatever. We're the ones who forwarded a real hard-nosed, intelligent political discourse that they couldn't keep up with. And here they are pathetically trying to copy it. Late as usual. Democrats and the left-leaning white media love to claim that democracy hangs in the balance. Well, as black people, we've never had democracy. And to this day, Biden still refuses to acknowledge the enormous part that he has played in our oppression. He has yet to admit to the policies and laws that he fought for and got passed, like the '86 Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which created the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between crack cocaine and powdered cocaine. He was one of the co-sponsors of that bill. Or the '94 crime bill, which he wrote. He fought against school busing and other social initiatives, and back then he got a little loose. He felt a little bit bold to say exactly what he thought about black people back then. He has yet to admit to this, to spell out his political sins, his racist anti-black sins, and then to say what he's going to do to reverse it and to compensate us for the damage that he did. Biden wants to pretend that it doesn't matter, as if he's going to bestow upon himself some clean slate, and he'll have some hand-picked sellout bootlicks like Cedric Richmond and Simone Mammy Sanders say, "Yep, boss, you ain't did nothing wrongs. You don't owe the black communities nothing. You ain't did nothing wrongs." Well, we're showing him that black people haven't forgotten, and we haven't forgiven either. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. And before we go any farther, don't let the white media shoehorn anyone else into this. This isn't about Hispanics or Asians or anyone else whose voter support has got Democrats shook. Those other groups already vote Republican by and large, or their numbers are too small to make a difference in an election. This is about black voters. In fact, that's what practically all of this New York Times piece even talks about. They're trying to prop up the fiction that black people alone cannot cost Biden the presidency, when we're the only reason that he's in the White House. Throwing other people into the conversation is their way of trying to talk around us. They'll push some minorities jargon or some people of color rhetoric and then make sure that anything that they do gives things to everyone except us. And then they say the DACA program had some Haitians who got helped, so that's tangibles for black people. Or they'll say black people can apply for some of these lift all boats programs. See, a handful of black people were able to apply for it. So see, there's something for you. And while it is true that there's still a lot of scared Negroes out there, the problem for the Democrats is they haven't got enough scared Negroes. More and more black people are seeing that Democrats aren't doing anything for us, and they're not pushing back against the Republicans' legislative attacks on us either. We see how Democrats fall all over each other to make sure they stick up for everybody else. All it took was for Clarence Thomas to make one off-the-cuff remark that the Supreme Court might re-examine its ruling legalizing gay marriage, and both Democrats and Republicans came together immediately to pass a federal gay marriage law. Black people are the primary victims of hate crimes in America, but Democrats have not and are not even trying to pass a black hate crimes law. They did pass one specifically for Asians, though. Look, 4 years ago, a lot of Negroes, even those in places like this, were scared. And that's something that needs to be admitted to. If you're scared, then just say you're scared. We see people quaking in their boots. Any Negro who said, we gotta vote for Biden because Trump is too dangerous, that's fear talking. Biden didn't deserve our vote any more than Trump did, because Biden promised us absolutely nothing. Oh, wait, strictly speaking, that's not exactly correct. He did make a couple of empty promises. He promised a White House-level police accountability commission when he was campaigning in 2020, but the instant that he was declared the winner of the election, before he even took office, he was already saying he wasn't going to do it. He said, let Congress try to pull that together. I'm just too busy. That means he never had any intention of doing it from the very beginning. That proposed White House Police Accountability Commission was a lie, and Biden knew it was a lie when he was promising it. He also chattered about a Lift Every Voice plan, and that, of course, was also forgotten the moment that he was declared the winner. His George Floyd Policing Act, nothing ever came of that, though his Solicitor General did make sure to send a friend of the court brief to the Supreme Court telling them to weaken the Miranda warning. Biden said that he refused to use his executive order's authority because, as he said, he didn't want to pass any executive orders that could simply be overturned by the very next Republican who took office. He wanted legislation. That is one of the weakest and dumbest excuses for not using the executive order authority. And it becomes clear that it's also a lie, too, because he signed an executive order regarding guidelines for federal police. And he even invited George Floyd's family to watch him sign this do-nothing piece of paper. So in one breath, Biden acknowledges that executive orders are of very little use and have no real permanence. And then he tells us that we should be dancing in the streets and kissing his behind because he signed an executive order. See, the same bootlicks and shills and DNC plants who have been laying low for the last 3.5 years, all of a sudden they're starting to stick their little heads up because we're going into an election cycle, and they have to, and it's their job to try to sell the soap. So part of our job as the new voices of black media is to make sure that you don't forget all of these sins and crimes that were committed against us, is to make sure that we keep it fresh in your mind, so when the bootlicks and these shills and these anonymous Twitter accounts show up trying to boost the Democrats, you are armed with the talking points where you can read them chapter and verse. Here's all the broken promises. Here's the stuff that he didn't do, and they can't refute it. See, we can't afford to let anyone have us running scared or voting scared either. And having a couple of hand-picked black female justices on the Supreme Court or having Kamala Harris, that game is not going to be working with black female voters either. They're still up to the same old tricks, but that's because white supremacy doesn't have any new plays in the playbook. We have attached demands to our vote. And more importantly than that, we've made it clear that we're prepared to just walk away from the process altogether, and that's got them shook. It's like I've long told you. People who are voting are not in revolt. And when people abandon the ballot box, well, 2 years ago the whole world saw exactly what can happen. The white media's bootlicks are terrified. They can't even talk about what we're doing. They don't dare. Their job is to be cheerleaders for their paymasters and to prove they can corral all of these unruly Negroes and get us to dance to Mass's tune. But they've royally failed at that. So they're trying to ignore what we're doing, but understand they're going to be trying another little devious move So far, they've been tiptoeing up to saying that, well, the reason black voters are turning away from Biden is because he's not doing anything for crime reform. No criminal justice reform, because all the black folks are in prison, remember? Then they're going to say, well, he's not doing anything for immigrants, and black voters are concerned about that. Or they're going to say he's not doing enough for abortion, or he's not doing enough for LGBT rights. Or they're going to say black people want Biden to give more money to the HBCUs. Or to black would-be Democrats who want to get into office. In other words, the white media's deflection is going to be to claim that black people want Democrats to do all these things that are only going to benefit the Democrats. They have these phony black front groups like Black PAC and others, organizations created by and funded entirely by white Democrat money whose job is to sell the soap for massa. White power has tried to use its unlimited resources to manufacture safe pet Negroes who will repeat their lies and then use its money to invent platforms for these puppets and carpet bomb us with their propaganda. But reality always has the last word. That's what they've tried to do so far, trying that political Jedi mind trick on us, and this is where it's put them. Democrats have long since let their plan slip. Rahm Emanuel and others have said it. Democrats have been trying to cobble together a non-black voter base to replace us, and that's because, as we're getting on code, we're making demands that will actually require white supremacy to give up its power, and they can't have that. See, the problem for the Democrats is that they're trapped on the horns of a dilemma. They want to give us the middle finger and then take all these other groups who they've been producing policies and tangibles for and formally announce that they're the new Democrat voter base and they don't have to do anything for black people, so the threat has been neutralized. Black voters are irrelevant. That's what they want to do, but they can't. See, this is like what happens when a company wants to expand its customer base or when a TV network or a TV show wants to expand its audience. They want to change things up so that they can attract all of those new eyeballs who they really want and start catering to that newer, larger audience, but they don't want to alienate their existing customer base too soon, because then they would lose all their customers at once and go out of business. See, Democrats face the same problem with this would-be voter-based pivot that they're trying to pull. What Democrats are doing is the political equivalent of monkey branching. Problem is, they can't let go of the first branch until they have a firm grasp on the next. The problem is, they don't. Asians trend for Republicans, and even if they didn't, like the LGBT community, there's simply not enough of them as a constituency to win national or even statewide elections. Hispanics also trend for Republicans, so they're not a reliable voter base. White suburban women could be influential, but they are the very definition of Karens, which is why Democrats are beating the hell out of that drum on abortion. But as I mentioned earlier, mostly that's supposed to be appealing to younger white suburban women, which means that you already have a niche within a niche. So for all you Democrat shills who lurk here or who post your asinine messages on Twitter, X, what a stupid name, this is why black people aren't falling for all your empty praise for Biden. We know his real track record, and your lies can't cover up the stink. When we demand to know what Biden has done for black people, you're not going to be able to get away with lying that he passed some arcane legislation that applies to everyone and then claim that somehow that constitutes a benefit for us. You shills are without conscience, decency, or morals. Most of you are bootlicks, tethers, intersectionalists. You hate the black community. You're like Karen Bass and Officer Eric Adams of the NYPD, who also moonlights as the city's mayor. You have contempt for the black community. And as you see it, if you can just lick enough of the Democrats' boots, then you'll do like Simone Mammy Sanders and get yourself a patronage job working for some Democrat politician, and then afterwards you'll be able to parlay that into a career as a consultant or maybe some gig on a TV show or something, which is what most of these clowns do. They see the black vote as nothing more than a way to burnish their own resumes, prove their usefulness to the white political machine. We are nothing more than useful idiots to them if we let them use us. Now, if you want to get yourself out of the scared and dumb column and into the brave and smart column, then understand this time around you don't do what you did 4 years ago and make excuses about how we need to vote for Biden because Trump's too dangerous. In reality, we were actually in less danger under Trump because black people couldn't deny the threat that he posed. We couldn't deny that we would have to fight. And we did. With Trump, we didn't sit on our hands. We got up on our feet. With Trump, we were on full alert, and we were fighting the bastard and all of his pals. Because of us, we set off a worldwide global revolution. We had everybody around the world following in our footsteps because they do that anyway. But then we talked ourselves into basically surrendering to the left arm of white supremacy. We put Biden in office without him promising us anything, and we walked away from the battlefield in the middle of the fight. See, we're under attack by both political parties. The only question is, when are we going to start fighting back? And under Trump, we couldn't go back to watching Love and Hip Hop or Tyler Perry's next movie or the NBA Finals. We actually had to face the facts that we were under threat because we couldn't deny it. And as a result, we saw these district attorneys and corrupt cops have the fear of God put into themselves. And we saw them charging these thugs with badges and putting the bastards in cages where they belong. And we didn't need a single election or to pass a single law to get it done either. When we mobilized, things happened. We put the enemy on the run. Yes, Donald Trump is dangerous, and that's a good thing because it means we have to accept the fact that we're going to have to fight. And for a while we did, and we had everybody shook. But that changed when we let the scared Negroes talk us into voting for Biden. We told ourselves we didn't need to fight these white supremacists anymore because all we had to do was put Biden in office and give Nancy Pelosi control of the House and Chuck Schumer control of the Senate, and why the Democrats in Congress who haven't done anything for us in 50 years, they're going to take up the fight for us. They'll do things because they know what'll happen if they don't. That was something that I recall somebody actually calling into a broadcast on one of these programs and actually saying, Biden knows what'll happen if he doesn't. He knows he's got to produce because he knows what'll happen if he doesn't. Well, we gave the Democrats complete control of the presidency and both houses of Congress, just like we did in 2008. And what did the Democrats do for us? What did Biden do for us? Nothing. What did they do to fight the Republicans who are attacking us? Nothing. They ignore police brutality and violence. They ignore the injustices we suffer daily. In fact, they go to the Supreme Court and argue on the police's behalf. And they do nothing about race killers like Carolyn Bryant. How is that better than Trump? We put Biden in office, and for 3 years he sat on his hands and did nothing while Carolyn Bryant was allowed to run around free as a bird. Didn't do anything about it. How is that better than Trump? So that's why Biden's support is falling and will continue to drop among black voters. Because Ron DeSantis isn't the only political moron running for president, but is too stupid to realize the black vote can't be ignored. Benign neglect is an ironclad policy of the Democrats. They are hell-bound and determined to die on that particular hill. And we will let them. We already see the Democrats pushing nothing but slogans at us, more hot air and empty talk. Well, I've got a slogan from the black grassroots to the Democrats. No reparations, no vote, no kidding. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Burkett Cochrane, Eric Bailey, Charlie, D. Tubman, and Zine Coley. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.